Howdy everyone, I'm the Shadow of the Hawk, and welcome back to my channel. So for those of you who are not in the know, I am on Legion Talks Monday night's Game of Thrones streams. Tonight, which of the December 4th, 2023, we are going to be watching two episodes, Season 6's episodes 5 and 6. I just finished watching episode 6. I had a lot of problems with these episodes. I'm probably not going to get to voice all of these issues that I have because the show is only an hour and 30 minutes and it's a panel. It's not just me rambling. It's a bunch of really, really cool people, and I don't want to weigh down the stream, nor do I want to waste time or anyone else's time. So I'm going to be creating this little video here, maybe some others, to just express my own negativity about the episode. Because, frankly, who wants negativity? Unless you do, at which point you're going to get some. So, as you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to be complaining about the mise en scène. Mise en scène being like how the set design tells a story. So, for instance, if you walk into a hall covered in weapons and animal heads, or maybe monster heads and tapestries of battle, that is telling the story that whoever owns this hall is of a warrior variety. They think in the mind of a warrior, they think in the mind of a hunter. Whereas if you had tapestries depicting religious things, and you had statues of gods, for instance, that would be a showcasing of the mise en scène being used to establish that this person, whoever owns this hall, is a very religious-minded person. And then if you enter a hall that's just full of random knickknacks encrusted with gold and gems, that would establish that this person values wealth, and not only that, but also showcases their wealth openly. It's very important to make sure that you get your mise en scène right, to establish how certain characters and certain individuals and certain groups act. And that is a failing of a lot of modern fantasy television. They fail in the mise en scène. They do what is cool or what is easy and not what makes the most sense. This is one of those scenes that I think Game of Thrones really dropped the ball on. So if I jump over here, you'll be able to see the scene that I'm talking about. So you've got Jaime riding up, flanked by a bunch of House Tyrell bannermen, or rather not bannermen, sorry, soldiers. There's Lord Tyrell. Notice how disciplined, orderly, organized, and centralized the Tyrell military is. That is not how the Tyrells would function. Hell, even centralized militaries like the Romans would not have that level of homogeneity in their units. They would have different kinds of armor. They would have different styled shields, different colorations of certain things. They would not be cookie-cutter replacements like that. But, fantasy show, whatever. But my fundamental underlying issue is the Tyrells should not have an army like that. They should not have even by the Roman standards, should not have a centralized, civilized, homogenous force. It should be a lot of levies supported by a large number of knights. Why? Well, because the Tyrells have a vast tract of agrariable land. They don't have sources of wealth like gold. They do not have access to ports, and they have a lot of territory, which means a lot of noble families, which translates to a lot of knights. However, the land itself is only valuable from farmland, which food is valuable, but it's not valuable enough to equip a standardized military, especially if your entire force is going to be dedicated to doing the very labor-intensive work of farming for most of the year. You're not going to have the spare manpower to have a centralized, organized military. So the Tyrells, and this is something you'd be able to read about in the books. This is established very heavily in the books. The Tyrells make war using levies, heavily using levies, like the other Westerosi houses, but more so than the others, because they can't really trust the knights of the different houses because they're all wanting to get the the seat of Highgarden because they all have better claims than the Tyrells do due to in-universe politicking. So the Tyrells really need the support of their common people, which plays into why they're a very diplomatic and very appeasatory house. They're always trying to make the common people love them, because if they don't, the common people will side with the other nobles and kill them. And many of the other nobles want to kill the Tyrells and only don't because they either hate each other or because they're married into the Tyrell household, trying to do their own little Game of Thrones to get into Highgarden. So what we just saw does not make sense from any sort of level for what the Tyrells should have as a military force. It should be a bunch of random peasants in whatever equipment they're able to acquire themselves, things like gambesons, things like things like brigandines, maybe some half plate or full plate, some splint, ringmail, different weapons, different kinds of pole arms, different kinds of helmets, maybe not even any helmets. Then you should have different symbols. You should have different houses, whether that be cousin branch, I think is the term, of different Tyrell subhouses or different loyal houses that have been married into the Tyrell family, like the Redwinds, for instance, that sort of thing. And then knights, either mounted or on foot, marching along to give a little bit of an extra force multiplier. What I think would have been much better for this scene is if you had Lannister soldiers come in to like make the groundwork, like to get in and like immediately clear out the crowds, and then you have the Tyrell soldiers come in and just make a mob effectively, just a buffer point between the mob of peasants outside, and then allow the Lannister soldiers, this union of Lannister and Tyrell working together would have sold the scene a lot more and also made more sense, because the Lannisters have a centralized military because their wealth comes from mining, which is very labor intensive, but it is centralized. You don't need the entire landmass of the Westerlands constantly at work. You need a few small points. And also, having those few small points means, and having less need for laborers because it's only those specific points generating massive amounts of wealth, means you don't need to appease everyone. You just need to appease a small number. And if that small number of people you're appeasing are soldiers, it makes more sense to give those soldiers better equipment and better conditions and things like that, which leads to a centralization of a military force like what we see with the Lannisters. So by giving the Tyrells a centralized military like we saw here, and a well-drilled military, you are taking what makes the Lannisters unique, having that centralized and well-disciplined and well-drilled military, and giving it to someone else who should not have it. No one else except maybe the Crownlands should have a military like this, because no one else is able to generate the kind of wealth to generate a force like this. That is my thoughts. That is my opinion. If you want to join the conversation down below, feel free to. And try to tune in to Monday night's Game of Thrones. Unless we stop doing that, whatever show we're doing after that point, feel free to tune in and watch that. Monday nights, I believe, 9 p.m. Eastern? No, 10 p.m. Eastern, and then 7 p.m. Pacific. Thank you very much for watching this episode. If you hated this episode, feel free to leave a dislike button. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can constantly jump back and leave hate comments and dislikes, because at the end of the day, any interaction is good interaction. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good day, and